Good evening, and thank you for coming to another segment of the Urban Academics Roundtable. Tonight, I am extremely excited about our guest who's going to share with us so many different things, not only about herself, but about us as educators and the students that we work with and how we can get them just thinking outside of the box. The COVID thing is still trending, along with Black Lives Matter, which has been going on for quite some time, to be honest, but has just come to a head because of Mr. Floyd's passing and his funerals this week. The other thing that's trending right now is the president wants to have a rally in Tulsa on Black Wall Street's property. So that is definitely trending and is in line with racism. And so our topic tonight is about global education as it stands. You know, is there really an agenda for a worldwide school system? And if there is, that's great. But how do we navigate through a global education sort of dynamic while we're in sort of a civil war domestically through racism? So I would like to introduce Lady Brittany Mackey, but that's not my job, so I'm going to hand the phone over, or the mic over, to Lady K, who will introduce our hot seat recipient for this evening.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is Kay Harvey, and I do have the privilege of co-moderating the Urban Academics Roundtable. And it is just my pleasure to be able to be in that capacity this evening. And we are honored to have with us this evening a young lady that has accomplished so much in such a short period of time. And I am also proud to be able to share this evening with everyone who is sacrificing their time to be here and share with all of us their experiences. So I just want to give praise and glory this evening to our Father who has set up this table for us. And we have come bearing gifts as well as being nourished from the wisdom that is going to be shared this evening. So this evening, it is my honor to introduce Ms. Brittany J. Mackey, who has grown up in, Haverhill, Massachusetts, which is about 45 minutes outside of Boston, it's north of Boston, in the Merrimack Valley area of the state, which is known for its artsy poetry, folks from many, many years ago, centuries ago. And so I have a question for her about her parents being strategic, possibly moving there from the Midwest. And so she had the privilege of going back and forth from the Midwest to Massachusetts. She attended the Calvary Baptist Church in Haverhill, and she is what they call a Calvary kid. And there, the members of that church were family, and she was inspired in everything that she was doing and has been able to achieve. And one of the things that she loved was travel and being able to embark upon the different cultures. And that all happened when she had the honor of going to Munich and Paris and Amsterdam one summer just before her middle school years with an uncle. She attended the Brooks School, which is a private coeducational boarding school in North Andover, where she was a day student for like 4 years. And during her time at Brooks, Brittany, she wanted to spend the summer abroad in France, but her dad was not one to let his daughter go off on his own. So he was not happy with that idea. So she spent the summer in a French language program in Montreal, Canada, closer to home, with her mom, and a friend drove her to that program. And it was about a six. Then she had the privilege of being in a 6-week Swigid, Hungary, through the exchange program that Brooks offered, the school where she attended. When she was not allowed to participate in the SYA in high school, which is the Student Youth Abroad program, she made her father promise that she would be able to spend a year once she got to college. And he did stick to that promise once she did get to Spelman. She matriculated there after high school and found her niche in the Model United Nations team. So Brittany was a representative from Spelman in the International Harvard World Moon Conference in Hague, Netherlands, and in Singapore. So she was able to go abroad and study in France, in Dakar, Senegal. When she graduated from Spelman with a bachelor's of art in French and International Studies, she graduated in 2011. She taught English for a year in Vietnam and France, respectively, returning to the region she studied abroad. When she returned here to the States, she fell into a job with a local nonprofit called LART, which is an ecumenical community of people with and without intellectual disabilities. Brittany was part of LART for 2 years while strategizing about what she wanted to do with the rest of her life. And she had the opportunity to spend time with the LARC community in Belgium. She ultimately decided to pursue a graduate degree, and with help from the Institute for Recruitment of Teachers associate program, she graduated with a master's in higher education from the University of Michigan in 2016. So at Michigan, she was able to accompany a faculty-led course to Morocco during the spring break as an intern in a study abroad office. About 6 months after graduating from the university, Brittany returned home to Massachusetts to work advising international university students and is presently in her second position in the field. She still loves to travel and aims to travel to Africa, to the African continent, on an annual basis. She speaks French fluently and owes her strong foundation in the language to her studies at Brooks Spelman in her time living in France and Senegal. So with all of that, she comes to us equipped this evening to talk about her experiences abroad and what she encountered as she was seeking her and fulfilling her thirst and for knowledge and her dream of teaching internationally. So we are honored to have you this evening, Miss Brittany. I am again pleased to be able to introduce you to the Urban Academics Roundtable this evening. So with all of that, would you please grace us with some of your wisdom and some of your experiences abroad and what you are experiencing now in this pandemic and with all the racism and the pain and the hurt that is going on around the world.
Yes, okay. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. I know when I gave you my bio, that really is my full life story. So I appreciate you sharing that with everyone. Good evening to everyone. Where to start? I think something that's top of my mind right now, as you mentioned, is the racism. I actually took a mental health day today from work. It was overdue. I had been wanting to do it since I am blessed to be able to work from home during this pandemic, and I've been wanting to just take a day for myself, and I feel like it came to a head with some of the recent events. So how am I feeling about it? I personally did not watch the video, and I have no desire or plans to watch the video. I'm on two sides, so part of me is very frustrated and angry that it's taken something so terrible to make the rest of the world see what Black people have been talking about for centuries. And then the other side is hopeful that maybe we as a community, the Black community, will now have the support needed for change to actually occur. So, yeah, that's what's on my mind about that. To a lesser extent, I mean, do you have questions about that? Sorry.
No. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. But, as you shared about my experiences, I'm happy to share about any racism or biases I experienced when abroad, but I will start with something I thought about when you were going through my bio is that I really used programs to go abroad. So my goal was always to be able to leave the country and to get outside. Since that first time my uncle took my cousin and I out of the country to Europe, he had a cousin who was in opera. She was performing in Porgy and Bess in Munich. He had a lot of airline miles. He and his wife did not have children of their own, and they had previously taken my cousin and I, who was also not their child, on other trips, and this just, for them, I guess it seems like another experience, something else for us to experience. I honestly did not think much of it. I had half a year of French from middle school, so I could say, do you speak English? And that's pretty much all I did all around Paris. And everybody in Paris speaks English because the metropolitan city is very international. But that sparked in me ways that I could get abroad as much as possible. So I think part of the reason why I was able to go abroad as so much is, yes, I did seek out the opportunities, but I think some of it was manifested as well. I put it out there into the universe, prayed about it. People knew that was something I wanted to do. And as that, as I shared more, I think opportunities began to show themselves to me. And I like to highlight that I use programs because that they provided a structure that was comforting for me. I like structure. I like lists. I like, knowing if I do these 5 steps, I get this result. So I did not necessarily, just find a random opportunity in a certain country. For Vietnam, I went through the Fulbright program. I had to apply. And, I had support when I was in country. Similarly with France, study abroad, they were through programs. I had both the support of Spelman, my university, my college at the time, and also the programs that were paid to make sure that students had resources and were cared for when they were there. So it's more now when I travel on my own. I still mainly travel to places where I know people. Thankfully, I have friends who are either visiting or from countries, and I can stay with them and be shown around. So that's what I think about. Can you all still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure. Yes. So I'm not sure what else to cover. We're thinking about, I was writing down what Trina was saying about thinking globally and the the times, I'll say, now that racism has come to the surface, I am encouraged in a sense about the global response to the American racism issue. I think that other countries have had to take honest looks at themselves. I'll use France as an example. France is nationalistic in an inclusive way. So I think a lot of times in the U.S. context, we think of nationalism as exclusionary, America for Americans. People say it that way. The French use it as an inclusive way to mean, once you're French, that's all that matters. They don't want to talk about background. If people know about their origins outside of France, they don't really want to talk about it. The baseline is that everyone's French and then therefore should be treated as such. But the reality is that people are not. There's just discrimination documented based on names when it comes to applying for jobs and resumes. And additionally, the practice may have changed recently, but, when I was there in college and even afterward, in order to apply for a job in France, you had to include a photo or two with your application. And that just leads you more to chances to be discriminated against and for racism to prevail. So I think what's happening in the U.S. now has really caused other countries to, I think the citizens in those countries, so while, other leaders may be condemning what's happening in the U.S., I see a lot of other citizens calling to task their own countries to address the injustices that are happening in their own country. You can't point a finger at America and not think about different things that are happening in your own backyard.
One of the things, just from you, making that statement, one of the things that it brought to my mind is, do we, in regard to applications, and do we eliminate there's a question of ethnicity, race, for applications for jobs, the census, the census is supposed to count people. Why do they need to know if I am African American when representation to Congress is based on the numbers? Mm. So do you think that is something that we can begin to have a discussion about as well?
I think there's room for that discussion. My understanding in them collecting that demographic information is to ensure that there is not bias, prejudice, practices going on. Now, in that same vein, I think that calls for some more transparency, because when you're asking, the form, it's one form, and some information you're telling me, yes, I'm filling out, I'm telling you that I'm Black on the form, but that's not going to be used in the decision making. I'm not sure how do you ensure that? So I think there's more transparency about how, maybe it's a separate thing. Is it that when you submit your application, it goes in one bucket and then the information is disaggregated in some sense? That's my understanding about people collecting that information. And I think it is actually government mandated, because I remember I was making an appointment one time for a doctor, and they asked me that information over the phone, and I asked why they needed to know. And the woman read a very clear, well, based on, the government, this, whatever, we asked for this information to ensure that we are not being prejudiced against people. And I said, okay, but, the same person I'm telling this information to is also taking other information. So I think some way to be transparent about how that information is actually being used and helping to ensure that there is not discrimination would be helpful.
The institutions that you had the privilege of attending, what kind of scholarships or financial assistance were made available to you? And did you have to go through a lot of hoops in order to access the type of funding that is needed to be able to do the things that you did?
Yes. Thank you for asking that question. I completely missed that with my private high school education. So just a quick overview. High school, yes, I had financial assistance outside of my family. College, I did not have financial assistance in the beginning, but I came across some scholarships along the way. And then grad school, I did have financial assistance. So starting with high school, it really was my network. You mentioned my being a member and attending Calvary Baptist Church. It was a formative part of my growing up. I had foundations, yes, spiritually, but beyond that, I had so many examples of Black people who were professionals, Black people who attended college. It really was normalized. It was also normalized in my home, both of my parents, but also like my extended family, particularly on my dad's side. But again, my dad's side were scattered all throughout the U.S. So the people I saw on a regular basis, at least once a week, they were the people who were reminding me, and we celebrated accomplishments growing up. We would go up to the front with the pastor and talk about report cards, different athletic awards too, but definitely academics was really, really put on the forefront. So I say all that to say there were several people before me in the church who had attended prep schools. There are a lot of prep schools in the New England area, so we had connections to people who had firsthand knowledge of those experiences, and also advocates who told us about the opportunity. So okay, you're thinking of going to high school. Have you considered going to this school? And for high school, the program I got some funding from, it was called ABC, A Better Chance. And the way A Better Chance works, my understanding is that they work with each individual institution to have money set aside for students, for ABC scholars, they called us. So it was an interview process. I knew alums of the program who had kids my age. So that was part of it. My pastor also, his family was a host family for A Better Chance scholars, because in addition to attending private schools, sometimes kids come from out of state and attend the really good public school. So Andover High School was not far from me. That was it's a strong system, public school system, predominantly white, overwhelmingly white, wealthy neighborhood, or town. So all of that goes into their school system. They had access to very much the same things that I had access to as a student at the private institution in North Andover. So knowing about ABC, knowing, how to apply to the program, there was an interview process, but I knew some of the interviewers. That sure helped. And then in addition, going to Brooks, there was somebody from our church who used to sit on the trustee board for the institution. And I can't remember if she was still on the trustee board when I got in, but my older brother, who's 6 years older, also attended Brooks. She was definitely on the board when he applied and got in, and really advocated for his presence there. And so that legacy, when my name came across, folks, they knew my last name, they knew what type of student my brother was, and which was a little bit to my detriment, because we're very different people. But I think all of those associations certainly helped in getting me into that system. So I was able to, got into Brooks, and based on Brooks's agreement with the Better Chance program, there were some financial assistance. I don't know the full extent, honestly, at that time. I feel like my mom kind of kept that from me for a period, but my mom was the one who was very adamant about my brother and I attending Brooks, and she funded our education there, whatever was the difference between the scholarship. Now, so for Spelman, I applied to all schools outside of New England. I just felt like I was sick of being in New England. I also knew, these prep schools, they feed to maybe 5 or 6 schools in the area, and I really did not want to spend the next 4 years with the same people I spent not the happiest 4 years of my life within high school. So I wanted to be in the South. The northernmost school I applied to was in the DMV area, D.C., Maryland, Virginia. In addition to Spelman, I applied to Howard University, was also accepted there. And when it came down to decision time, I was really deciding between Spelman and a school called Rhodes College. I think it's a college, which is in Memphis, Tennessee. And Rhodes is a small liberal arts school, predominantly white institution. Their study abroad program is what drew me, and that was my main criteria when I was looking for colleges. That I asked all of the recruiters, I asked at fairs, do you have free study abroad? Because I learned that a lot of schools advertise it as free, but what I really was asking was that if I'm going to study abroad, will I need to pay tuition and also the program costs? So I wanted to make sure that I would not. And sometimes, you still might just pay the program cost, but sometimes that program cost is more than a semester at the institution. So I got, some information about that. Rhodes gave me a very large sum of money. They, the acceptance letter, I was kind of floored by the amount. And then I got my little acceptance letter from Spelman that had nothing. And I think in retrospect, I learned from students after I matriculated at Spelman that there were many students who had similar acceptances. Maybe they were to Ivy institutions or other institutions that really gave them money. And what they did was go back to Spelman and say, I really want to attend your institution. This other institution is offering me this. Is there any way for you to match this? Is there any more assistance that you can provide me so that I can fulfill my dream in attending Spelman? And that's something I try and share with as many people as possible, to know that you have some power in negotiating for colleges. I did not do that. I ultimately chose to attend Spelman because my mother told me a story that she always wanted to attend Spelman, and she was accepted, and her parents could not afford it. And I personally did not have any, I wasn't so in love with Rhodes or any other institution that I would not choose to attend Spelman. So, I recognize my mother had sacrificed so much for me, and I felt like this was the least that I could do for her. In addition, Spelman's not a terrible institution. It's #1 HBCU. It needs several lists for liberal arts institutions that aren't just HBCU based. So, we were on lists with other women's colleges, which became important to me, I think, later on in life. So Spelman got there. First year was fine. I was honestly thinking of transferring after the first year. I had in my head, okay, I'll try this, and if it doesn't work out, I can always go somewhere else. I got into my second year, and that's when I found the Model United Nations team, and I found people who were interested in international affairs like me, who were interested in traveling. I joined the team because I liked the people that I met, but honestly, transparent moment, I knew that there were international conferences, and that the school would pay for you to go to the conferences. So I was like, oh, let me get on this team. Now, there was not a guarantee that I would be chosen to go to the conferences, but I said, I'm going to get on this team. I'm going to do my work. I'm going to try as hard as I can to be chosen to see if I can participate. And something else I will say that is like Model United Nations exists at many different institutions, and at Spelman it was truly an extracurricular activity. So what that meant is, we had all of our regular classes, full course load. Then we did this, we found time, we made time to study, and you really have to do a lot of policy. You have to learn each conference, you have to write a position paper. So you're assigned a country, and then you're given a topic, and you have to write a paper based on your country's topic, how your country would respond, what are some initiatives they might take, what are some initiatives they've already taken, have they collaborated with other countries on different things. So that was research on top of other research and activities we had to do, and I thought that's how it was at every institution until we went to a local conference and realized some students were enrolled in Model United Nations courses where they had a professor. We had a professor advisor, of course, but they had a professor. It was a course that they were getting credit for. It was part of the regular schedule, which allowed them, I think, to allot more time to preparing for these conferences. So, stayed at Spelman, knew I wanted to go abroad my junior year. I think sophomore year, I learned that as I declared my major to be international studies, there were our department-specific funds available. So I applied for funding, and I got a scholarship to help with my last 2 years at Spelman. It did not fully cover tuition or room and board at all, but it definitely helped. And this is another point to the study abroad. We had a great study abroad advisor. She advocated a lot for Spelman students. Her name is Dr. Marjorie Gans, white woman of Jewish ancestry, and she put policies in place that really were to help students. So, for example, if you qualified for a Pell Grant, there is a scholarship for studying abroad called the Gilman. She required you to apply for that scholarship. So if you came in, you wanted to study abroad, she's like, great, where are you thinking of going? Awesome. Next question is, do you have a Pell Grant? Yes, okay. You cannot talk to me further until you show me that you've applied for this Gilman scholarship. Gilman scholarship's up to $5,000. It could be long-term or short-term study abroad. But that was just, I think, a great policy that she had in place. So in addition to that, she brokered partnerships with study abroad programs so that students were paying Spelman's tuition when they went abroad. I don't know all the details of that, but I do know what we did is we would pay Spelman, and Spelman would pay the provider. And what that allowed was that if people, if you missed a payment, if you're behind on something, it was really Spelman supporting you, and you were dealing with Spelman instead of this third party trying to get money from you, trying to do whatever. So I felt like Spelman really put themselves in the gap for their students in that sense. Lastly, for graduate school, so my parents definitely helped, particularly my dad, for my undergraduate education. I felt there was an expectation that I would get a graduate degree, and I also was told explicitly that graduate school would be on my own, aka I would have to pay for it. So in my head, I thought, I've heard of companies pay for things, but as you heard in my bio, I was not in a career, so I wasn't in a situation where somebody could fund my my graduate education. And again, this is where my network came in. Somebody from church had known that I taught abroad in Vietnam and France. And again, like transparency, Vietnam and France, I call my break-even years. So I wasn't in love with teaching. I didn't hate it, but after those experiences, I was sure that I did not want to be in the classroom side of education personally. But I was just looking for ways after graduation that I could still be abroad and be able to survive on my own. So I found these opportunities through Spelman. They were posted. I knew about the Fulbright program from sophomore year. I was talking to Dr. Gans, who also ran helped with that process. We had, I'm going to come back to my grad school years in a moment. But for Fulbright particularly, it was strategic. Spelman wanted to be on lists that said that we had X number of Fulbrights awarded. There are teaching assistantships and also research fellowships that you can get through the Fulbright program. So she had compiled past essays from winning awards, and we got those essays, of course, without people's names on them. And I felt like that was my formula to study. I learned, okay, for this essay, I need my first paragraph to talk about myself. I need the second paragraph to talk about why I want to go to Vietnam. I need the third paragraph to talk about what I want to research in addition to teaching in Vietnam. And the last paragraph is going to say, what are my aspirations, after I finish my time in Vietnam, what I want to do with my career, what I want to do with the things I've learned. So that made it really accessible. I know from friends in the program that other institutions had courses, again, that helped you with the Fulbright process. But more than anything, at other institutions, you were not guaranteed for the institution to support you and put your application forward. Because when you apply for Fulbright, yes, I have my own part, but there also is a lot of support from the institution that has to say, yes, this is a student that we are saying is from Spelman College and is applying for this. So I knew places that you applied for something internally, and then that office decided whether or not you were worth putting forward to the Fulbright committee. And some people applied as students at large, so that meant that they weren't applying as part of their, university or part of their state. They applied as part of their state instead. And again, that's just another layer of support. But back to graduate school, because of those experiences I had teaching abroad, a lot of people who knew about those experiences in my community and my network thought that my aspirations were to teach. And I was running, I think, from education. I didn't know that I could be involved with the administrative side, particularly at the university level. I hadn't thought about it. I knew people were in those positions. I loved Dr. Gans. I thought that would be great if I could do something like she did. I didn't necessarily know the path. So a friend from church mentioned IRT to me, Institute for the Recruitment of Teachers, and I'm very thankful to her for mentioning it to me and also for staying on me, because she mentioned it and I honestly dismissed it. She mentioned it again and sent me the link, and I read a little bit about it, and all I kept seeing was teacher, 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 and I was like, I do not want to teach. I don't want to be in the classroom. I'm sure that's what people think that I want to do, but that's not what I want to do. I had decided that I wanted to work and study abroad, and I just really felt like there was not a career in that, and that I couldn't, make money in that sense. I didn't know about higher education administration. It just was really far off for me. So thanks to this friend from church, she had a personal relationship with the director of the program. It is housed at another prep school in the area called Phillips Andover Academy. You may have heard of it. There are several presidents who've attended that institution. There's another Phillips Academy in Exeter, which also has notable alums who are presidents or other people of note in the U.S. I think Bush attended Phillips Exeter, if I remember correctly. But all that to say, because of that connection, she agreed to meet me for breakfast. And I went with my self-righteousness because I just knew that this program was not for me. And I sat down and I was gracious to her. I said, oh, thank you for taking the time, and commenced to explain how our family friend misunderstood exactly what I wanted to do in life, explained what I wanted to do in life and why I could not do that through this program. And she was very kind and listening to me all the way out, and then said, actually, what you want to do is exactly what this program was created for. And I was like, what? You mean there's a master's degree to prepare me for what I want to do? I didn't know that was an option. She told me about higher education. I think the field has grown a lot. I think a lot of people have been pursuing masters in that field, but this is still kind of the beginning of the influx of that. So she encouraged me to apply. I left feeling a lot better about my future prospects. I applied and was accepted. Now, while I do think, I studied hard, I do think I'm an intelligent person. I do not want to discount that the personal relationship that I had with the executive director through a family friend factored into my being accepted. I fully believe that helped me to be accepted. And I also know that helped in the way that I functioned within the program. So the way the program works is you can be accepted right out of undergrad, in which case you come for a summer and you take like simulations of the graduate program courses so that you can really be prepared for the jump from undergrad to grad school. It's for people who are looking to be in education, who want to study either at the doctoral or master's level. So there's some people who, are studying, want to get a PhD in history and hope to be a lecturer. To present, I believe, there's no, you don't have to promise to go into that field. And I say that as, so if I got my master's in higher ed and then I decided at the end of that I didn't want to work in higher education, there are no repercussions. I don't have to, give back money. Also, similarly to how ABC functions, IRT has positioned themselves to make partnerships with institutions. They call them a consortium of schools. I think probably 50 or 60 schools that have great relationships with IRT. We were able to meet with deans and other reps from the schools. On a weekend, they came to us in Andover for us to have private conversations with them and set up their own fair for us to apply. So the funding does not come through IRT, but I feel they act as kind of a pre-vetting for these programs. So my funding came from the University of Michigan, and while IRT does not guarantee that you will have full funding, particularly at the master's level, that's not as widely, doesn't happen as much as at doctoral level. At the doctoral level, I think it's an expectation that you are fully funded. But for a master's student, that is not the case. So no guarantees, but I am thankful. One more thing. We do have to apply for a minimum of 10 programs. They do have to be programs within the consortium. If you want to apply for programs outside, you can, but somebody walks through your, personal statement of purposes. And I felt like, again, I came up with a template, and a lot of the changes were just names of schools in my essays. If there was a particular program, some programs were student affairs, some were higher ed, mention of particular professors that I wanted to work with, and research that they've done that aligned with my hopes of research in graduate school. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. That's mainly it, but it's an intense program. So since I was not an undergrad student, it was all online. I was still working, and I emailed. I had calls with my advisor. She ripped apart several of my essays, got them right, and at the end of all that, I had probably 6 schools to choose from that had full funding offers for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
That is wonderful. That is just wonderful. Right now we have represented on this call Massachusetts, New York City, Atlanta, Georgia, New Haven, Connecticut, Charlotte, North Carolina, and New Haven again, maybe Waterbury, Connecticut. But so we have quite a few people on the phone, and I want to make sure we can just at least go around to a couple of them, and so they can get some of their questions out. Some people sneak me, they sneak me text messages during this, so they're asking all kinds of things. Somebody even voting for you for president. So someone has said she'd be perfect for president. And I'm like, oh,
You can't see my face,
So,
but I don't think I have a presidential face. It gives it away too much, so I don't think I'm.
Oh, man. You have a beautiful face.
Thank you.
You have a beautiful face. I think we need your face in the White House. I almost agree. But what I've heard so far, though, Brittany, is that the reason that you were able to sort of chart your own territory is because you wanted to. It's that simple. You made a decision, and based on your decision, you came up with a few goals, and then you started going toward them. And you didn't let anyone distract you from what you saw in front of you. And so what I heard you say was you had access. So you had you something about you knew about Brooks. Then you had criteria. You had your own set of standards as a young person. Then somehow you were able to negotiate. Even with Spelman, you were able to put your bootstraps up and say, yo, y'all can give me some money. Then not only that, but you were able to network and you responded to structure. And that could be, just a summation of what you've already said. But what I'm hearing is a young person, a very, very young person, all the way back in elementary school, saw today. You could see some glimpses of it as you started going forward, and that was more exciting than the thing to the left or to the right. And I just want to say thank you for being an example of the ability to do that. Like, we all have that choice, and like I went to college right out of high school. I swear I did, but I got pregnant right in the middle there. You see what I mean? So something distracted me for a minute. Today I have a master's degree. I didn't always have that. And so not everyone has your story. And so we need to hear all sides of it. Some people like the story like mine where things go wrong and you get back up, and then they go wrong again and you get back up, and they go wrong again and you get back up. But that's cyclical. Your course is a straight line, and I love it. And I'm just grateful to have you on the call tonight. And so brace yourself, because I know they have a few questions for you, and I'm just glad you're here.
You're my best. Thank you.
Well, since you stole my, my intro, it was me who said I would love to see you as a president and president of a movement. President of a movement.
What's your name? And where are you calling from?
This is Carlton White from Waterbury / I am from New Haven. I will always be a prodigy of New Haven. But right now I live in Waterbury. I work for the Department of Children and Families, and I have been working with children my entire life. So I applaud you. I salute you. And with all your accomplishments and your accolades, I know you made a parent proud out there, because I'm proud of you.
Oh,
but I have a two-part question.
Sure. Okay.
One was, what was your motivation? Because I know you had a drive. I heard you had your own drive, but what was your motivation? And my second part is, if you had a platform, what would you say to the inner city girls to motivate them and get them to focus on careers and to strengthen their mind?
Okay, so I'll start with motivation, and I have to say, Trina, I appreciate you saying, I was really focused. Full disclosure, I feel like I'm not quite as focused now. I feel like my motivation, honestly, was just to get abroad. That the time when I went for the summer, it was really, it might have been a whole of 2 weeks in 3 different countries, and I felt like each taste, it was just enough to make me be like, oh, I can't wait to come back. I really want to come back. I want to come back. And we'd already, my uncle had already kind of decided what we're doing, and even we were in Paris about to leave, and he was like, I really wish we could have stayed a little bit longer, but we had these trains booked and, hotels booked, whatever. So I honestly think the motivation was to travel abroad. But as far as academic success, again, transparency moment, I think I'm working through this in therapy somewhat. I think I wanted recognition. I think I felt like it was something I could control. I knew I could work hard and I could study hard and be recognized, and I liked being recognized for my academic achievements. So I'm sure that was part of it. And then, of course, just the way that the world is set up and the systems are set up, when you have academic achievements, that does give you access to other things. I didn't realize that necessarily at the time. I'm sure I caught on by high school, but that was not, the driving force prior to that point. And then for inner city girls, again, full disclosure, I'm not an inner city girl. I am a product of the suburbs. Now I will say, Spelman, the western area of Atlanta is considered, I'm sure, inner city. It is gentrifying, but what I say to them, or my platform, I think my platform really is just like figuring out systems and then telling people as much as I can how to get around systems. So I love figuring out how things work and then like giving people the cheat codes in a sense, So with inner city girls, I would love to just hear from them, because I think that they could access similar things that I did. It might not look the same way, but I would love for people to know, like, this thing exists, it's out there. Let's figure out how you can get there, and then more importantly, once you get there, this is how you make the system work for you. Because there's a lot of systems out there that are not created for us. But as soon as I find out about something, I want to share with everybody. IRT, I've told everybody, anybody who is ever thinking about getting a graduate degree, I tell to look at IRT, even if they're not looking into education, because at least it's a plan B. I feel like it's a system that works well, and have the support once you get to other parts of the system.
Interesting. And you're very articulate too, so I really appreciate that as well. I have a daughter. My daughter is she works for the government. She's in Virginia. She works in D.C. She's the deputy commissioner for the Department of Defense. So when I see young African American girls doing their thing, I have to applaud them and tip their hat. And I just wish more can get focused and stop worrying about the little things and think big. Shoot for the moon. You don't make it, you be amongst the stars. Thank you for sharing that with me anyway.
You're welcome. Yeah, thank you for your question. I feel like I might need to hit up your daughter to figure out how to get into the government.
Well, you can hit her up, because we know mutual people, and we'll go through Trina and make that happen.
Okay, thank you.
No doubt, my son is starting a new job in D.C. come July 1. So we plan on meeting him there to move him in. So if you want to join us, Brittany, you can join us in D.C. for July 1st. We're planning on just coming through to just wish him well. And he doesn't know it's a surprise that we're coming. But he is, I never dreamt of having a son in academia. I'm a master's level social worker who works in education and mental health. So I have a little bit of both, on both sides of the spectrum, so I can speak to either or. And for him to fall into academia and literally be a dean of anything in any school is just, I know that has to be God's plan. I know it has to be God's plan. So we are academia. We really are. We are people involved in motivating students higher, and that's the acronym for PMOSH. But I have a question for you, Brittany. Now, you made a comment earlier around, I would love to be the sort of the infrastructure of how we get this done. You already are. I just need to tell you that. And I don't think you understand. I don't think you know. I really don't think you understand who you are in terms of international influence. You have visited more countries than I'm just going to say over 75% of Black adults. I'll say 80%, because I travel a lot. I travel more than most people, but I've not seen some of the places that you have. I can't go over there and speak to education over there. You can. I can speak to education here, like I'm your partner in this, but I can't speak to global education outside of this here pandemic. The research that I've done since this has shown me that we're already in a worldwide education system. Like, I have documents and proof of that. But I can't tell you, that's all theory, basically. I can't tell you what it's like to teach in France or Senegal or visit all these places that you visited. You've hung out with Harvard University from another institution. And so we have a president right now who doesn't understand protocol, but you do. Yeah. I'm sure somewhere they gave you Robert's Rules of Order in order for you to go through those circles that you've been in. You see what I mean? I don't think our president has read that book. You know what I mean? So you know what to do when a lot of us do not. So can you speak to, real quick, what I have another question about private, not a question, but more of a statement, but I'll save that in case somebody else wants to jump in. But I would like for you to speak a little bit to parents who have young children who haven't seen a book, haven't seen a number, haven't seen any letters floating across, they haven't read anything, they haven't seen a number, they haven't thought about going into a learning mode in their body. Like you said earlier, I put it out in the atmosphere, I knew what I wanted. You did, but you are rare. How do we make it more, I don't know if frequent is the word, but we need more of this. Like, I have a granddaughter, and I need her to get out of this country before she's 14. I need her to see something different. I don't like what she's watching. So can you help parents?
Cool. Well, I'm not a parent, but I'll try and think back. So you mentioned, I think you mentioned reading, and I did not highlight this, but I think reading is very, very important. I did a lot of book challenges as a child, again, to the public library. So something else about me is that I'm generally a frugal person. So when stuff's free, that's what I like. Libraries, you just need to have, a piece of mail that has your address on it. In some cases now, during this pandemic, they are issuing even digital library cards so that you can borrow things digitally and also maybe pick them up outside of your library. But there are so many resources for free at the library. So your kids can read books there. There are a lot of discussion guides that does require probably access to the internet, but discussion guides so that students can pick out the main themes in books. What are they supposed to get from a book? But I think my parents that was a big part of growing up, particularly for my mom. I remember we lived in New Hampshire for a while, and we were latchkey kids. And with the age difference, my brother wanted to go places, and because we were both home, he had to take me. You can't leave a 7-year-old by themselves at home. And we would walk to the library, and it was not a short walk. We'd walk to the little one-room library in our town because it was something to do, because there was air conditioning, because it was a change of scenery. And then when we moved to Massachusetts, we would take the bus, and that's how I learned how to take the bus in my town, because my brother was sick of being at home with just me, wanted to go places, and we'd go to the library. They had internet, they had books, they had things to do for kids. So I think that is part of it. Getting involved locally, I think, is important too. Again, I got a lot from my church, but a lot of that information came from people knowing about local things. My church, not everybody is from the same town, so you hear about different things. If you live in another town that has more resources, we were still hearing about those things because somebody lived in that town. So I think learning what local resources are available is important. I'm trying to do that more currently. I think it's easy for me to tune into what's happening nationally or even internationally, but what does my town provide? What's going on? So those are the main things I can think of. And educating yourselves as parents too. The library has resources for adults as well.
How true it is. One thing that's surely missed at libraries is the fact that a lot of our homeless would hang out there all day. And by law, they could be there all day as long as they didn't go to sleep or they weren't a nuisance. And so with that, with the libraries being closed, there's so many things to contend with, because what they don't realize is that there are children who are homeless too. If there's a homeless mom, her child is homeless. So I think a lot of times the people who answer these calls are not necessarily the ones who have children. And like you said, you don't have children, but you can speak to what should be done for a child because you've been a child with parents. So you don't necessarily have to be the parent, but you have everything you need to speak to any population who might just come near you. and I mean it, because being at PMOSH for all these years, one thing that I know for certain is that books can definitely take you away. Like, they can take you to where you want to go. I raised my children on read everything. Read everything. The information is where? And they would say, in the words. Where's the information? They would say, in the words. Where's the information? In the words. Read that. Walmart. We read everything. So part of how I know a lot of what I know is because I can be in a line, and instead of just standing there, I read every single thing I see because I want to know. I want to know what's what. Overseas, I can't. When I leave the country, I'm on vacation. I've never thought about. I'm serious. I have never. This is so awesome to me. I hope I'm not the only one who's in awe, but I am in awe. I am just in awe, and I just. That's what I am, in awe of how young you are. Can I tell them how old you are?
Sure.
Brittany's 31.
What?
Guys, she's 31. So can you imagine what 41 looks like? Think about it. And then she's just getting started. She hasn't gotten started yet. She hasn't. And I think each of us can take, if nothing else from this call, to just go for it. If you see it, believe it. And move. Take some kind of action towards it. It can be tiny, tiny little steps, as long as it's in the same direction of what you see. And listen, I'm the number one distracted person. You know what I mean? So I understand how distractions happen. But if you really want something, it's time to put the distractions away. If we haven't learned anything through COVID-19, it's that we only have one life. It's not a dress rehearsal. So with that, I need to hear something from New York. I need to hear something from some other people. Because we're at 10:30.
Yeah. Sorry, I have two quick things, because you mentioned particularly thinking about parents. So one thing I will give a plug to is after-school programs, and just a sense that, like, both of my parents worked outside of the home. So I mentioned we were latchkey kids, but both of my parents worked outside the home, so that meant I was going to after-school programs. Some were in, through the community, so not paying, or they were low pay. I remember one was run by the YMCA, but that, these programs had to have different educational things, different aspects. So that was certainly an enriching part. And then I noted to just cultivate curiosity in kids. And for me, I think particularly this came from my father. Anytime I ask him a question, I reminded him, and you said, Trina, that you read everything and you tell your kids to read everything. I didn't grow up with encyclopedias, but I would have questions, or even something as simple as, what does this word mean? He would make me go to a dictionary and look it up. And I did not like it at all. I went through a period where I stopped asking him questions because I knew he would not give me the answer. But I think about that now, that's created a type of habit in me that I think of something, yes, I could ask somebody, but before that, I'm just going to, go through Google real quick and just see what comes up. How can I find a reputable source to answer my question?
And that's research 101. Like, if you're reading something and you run across a word that you're not familiar with, you should automatically go to a dictionary. And that's what I teach every single child. Like, the first order of business with a tutorial service is to get them reading so you can see where they are on their own without some kind of an assessment and all that big, crazy stuff. All we need to do is get you reading, and we know right away where you are. Most children don't want to read. They just don't. Yeah. And we're in an environment now where the government has shut down schools for now 90 days, going on 90 days. And so some children, again, haven't seen a word. They haven't seen a number. They haven't. And so what does that mean? We know that the research points to summer, where children lose, or they don't get to retain everything in the summer. They lose so much of what they learned over the year. Well, this year we're going to have 3 summers, the equivalent of 3 summers. In your opinion, your professional and personal opinion, what do you think that's going to look like come September, if schools are even able to open?
Yeah. So I will add also really quickly that I didn't grow up with cable. I don't think we had cable until I was maybe halfway through middle school. And I'm not totally sure if that was planned by my parents, but, you know, PBS is very educational. That's their basis. So that's just something else to think in mind. There were fewer distractions because there were not streaming services and the such. But what do I think that's going to mean for students? I mean, I can speak mostly to the university level. We're already seeing that with Gen Z. They have different needs. People call them maybe like a microwave generation. I think their attention spans are reduced a lot of times because things are so instant. I find myself, the more that I was consuming things online, you know, a 3-minute video felt like an eternity because I was so used to things just coming so quickly. This Gen Z as well is used to personalized services or personalized approaches. So, you know, the structures that I just raved about that worked for me, for 10 students, those structures would have to be modified to fit their specific needs. And it's more work on a teacher side, it's more work on an administrator side. So I imagine that with the 3 summers, there's going to be a lot of enrichment needed. I think professors are probably going to need to make some concessions, maybe become more flexible or inventive for what types of assignments that they are assigning to students. I'm not sure how it will actually be made up, but I think there's going to be a lot of flexibility on the service providing side, so from institutions, from teachers, in order to make sure that students can get back up to these levels and maintain them.
So how do you feel about artificial intelligence for learning?
I don't know if I know a lot about it. I don't.
Well, it's happening. It's here. It's here. Just like your grocery store tellers, teachers are about to be computers. Mm-hmm. Like now, that's where we are. That's where we are. Like now, right now. They've been testing since 2010. They started implementing in 2014, and where we are now is virtual learning. The schools that have already implemented never missed a beat. For example, my son works for Achievement First Schools, and he has been working behind a computer since the state was shut down. Their students have not missed a single day of school. They have matriculated this whole time. That's not true for a lot of kids that I work with here in Charlotte. You see what I'm saying? So it depends on your system and whether you have matriculated into that early enough. And so I don't know if many schools have done that, but it's already happening. And so think about the lady who used to say, "Hi, how are you today?" and you put your groceries up, and so you get a little bit of social interactivity just saying something to the lady. But now there's one lady, and there's like 18 little things, and you can just go around and buy your things and walk out the door. And even Starbucks is closing because we don't want to be social anymore. So I just think about it that way for teaching, even if you don't understand. Artificial intelligence, just think about it in terms of us replacing people with robots.
I mean, I think there's something about the human connection that cannot be replicated. Maybe I'll say yet, as far as computers and artificial intelligence. And again, that brings me back to like Gen Z. That is another critique of the generation, that they're not as social and they don't know how to have those interactions. And until, if schools are headed that way, maybe workforces are too. But from what I've seen, there's still a lot of, social interactions in the workforce, how to conduct yourself in a Zoom meeting, how to write an email to somebody. These are things that I see students not necessarily having those skills, knowing those things. And there's still requirements to be successful in the system again. So maybe the system will change by the time that they are the ones in the careers. But for right now, I think if it's completely artificial intelligence, completely devoid of social interaction, I mean, I'm an introvert. When we started working from home, I loved it. But I also felt like there was too much interaction because people were trying to replace the commonplace interactions in the office, just like saying hi, with a Zoom meeting, with an MS Teams check-in. And it's like I felt like I didn't need that much interaction to do my job. But I also, from my experience, knew how to fake it, for lack of a better word. And sometimes I worry about the next generation's ability to fake it. And also this sense that they don't, why should I fake it? I shouldn't. I want to be my authentic self.
That's awesome, that statement about the next generation and the fear that they won't be able, not just fake it, but, I'm telling you, the first thing they taught me in grad school was fake it till you make it, I swear.
Fake it till you make it, absolutely.
I swear. Fake it till you make it.
That's got me through a lot in life.
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder, okay, I'll go here for a minute. My children went to private school, and I didn't have the money to pay for private school. There was a program called FIFA, and they paid part of the tuition, and then I worked at the school twice a week with no pay. I drove my children out almost 20 miles in and 20 miles out in a little putt-putt Subaru. And everything they needed from me, I was there to provide because I didn't want my children to be without that environment. And so I was there 3 days a week working in that office for hours in exchange for their private school education. And I don't regret that. I don't regret that sacrifice. I just do not see it now with this generation of parents. Like, I was really young with my children. Very young. I had my first child at 19. I was between my sophomore and junior year in college. So I was a baby, but something in me knew that my children were special, that my children could not be like everyone else's children, and that the sacrifice was on me. And so help me, even though you do not have children, I just want you to I just want you to speak to that.
So when you mentioned working at the school, I will say my mom has said several times, I think, again, being up here, New England boarding school, I think it's one of the best kept secrets to work at the institution because you get housing a lot of times. You have access to the dining hall almost year round. When the school shuts down for the summer, you'd have to, buy groceries on your own. But even as a day student, I had 3 meals at the school, paying less because I wasn't living there. But the only real difference was that someone came to pick me up so I could go sleep in my bed. But I had breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the institution. And when you work there, while policies may change a bit, there is a discount. And oftentimes, if you work there long enough, your child can go for free. So that, I think it's a lot about sacrifice. And I point again to, I think my parents I know my parents sacrificed. And I'm grateful for them sacrificing. I don't think they threw it in my face, but I do feel as if a responsibility was also put on me so that if I decide to have children, I have a standard. I could not imagine burdening my children with college debt, and that's simply because that was the standard that was set for me. And I think each generation we try to do better. So, I feel like I would be like, how dare I take advantage of the things that my parents sacrificed for me and then not work to be able to pass the same thing on to my kids. So I think priorities are really important. And just a short story, I remember I did encounter somebody who has kids, has children, younger than my parents. They're younger than my parents. And I remember, they were living abroad. Their husband's company paid for their housing, beautiful home. Everything was great. And I remember talking about college with them and, where their kids were thinking of going. And the person said to me, well, that's their decision. It's their debt. And it stopped me in my tracks because to me, I was thinking, how are you giving them all these materialistic things right now, but not planning for their educational future? And I don't know what ends up happening with that family. I'm not sure if maybe they are supporting the child, but to hear that person say that to me was that they were prioritizing the kids having all of these things right now instead of planning for their future. So, I mean, as a child, I would say it is about prioritizing. If you can have some transparency with your children, I'm not one to think you burden children about what issues are going on, with your family financially specifically, but it's important for kids to understand the value of money, the value of financial planning, what that looks like. If somebody else is having this new thing, okay, well, we're going to the thrift shop or we're shopping here because of this thing. And they might not understand in the moment, but I'll tell you, I grew up shopping at thrift shops. We were going there before it was a cool thing. And when it became a cool thing, that was a difficult thing for me because I was like, thrift shops have been around forever, since before it was cool to wear somebody else's clothes. And I didn't have that hard time with it. My brother struggled with wearing secondhand clothing. But when I look back, I'm happy that those are decisions that my mom and my parents made in order for me to be where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. Very, 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 very important.
Absolutely.
Very important. Because the sacrifice is what it is. And that's true for every parent. That's true for every student who's trying to get to where you are or some level of that. That's true for anyone who would be on a call on a Thursday evening till 11:15. That's true for any of us. You know what I mean? So we know that those that are on this call are not your average folk. We agree. We absolutely agree. You know what I mean? And so we want people like you and others to join the call so that we do have a platform that we can repurpose all of this content and get it to where it needs to go and to get people to somehow hear you talk about these things because it's real. It's real on a number of different levels. And I'm really grateful again that you're here. It is, though, 10:50, guys. So if you have a question for Lady Brittany, now's a good time to ask her. And if you don't have a question, just give us a shout-out from who you are, where you're from, and what the climate is where you're calling from. No, you know I don't like silence. I will jump right back in there.
I don't like cricket. At least introduce us so we know that there are people on the line.
Honey, yeah. Several people on the line. Why are you so shy, guys? I can see you. I have a platform. I can see you.
I want to talk about some social media stuff because right now I'm an angry black man. I'm pissed off. I'm not going to hide my anger. I'm mad at what's going on in the world. The pandemic, I'm mad at that because they're really messing up socialization. I don't know if you know anything about the Agenda 21, the depopulation of the world. I'm mad about that. They're targeting blacks. I'm mad about that. And then what I'm really, really, really mad about is the fact that they got this billionaire who don't know nothing about medical, and he's running the whole medical field. Like, I don't understand because he got money, and I'm talking about Bill Gates because that's his virus out there. So some of y'all may not know. Some of y'all may know. I work for an organization called Welcome to Reality, and we talked about we research social media We've talked to some of the most powerful people in the world in terms of social media. We've been to their homes in Massachusetts, all over Connecticut, abroad as well as in Canada. I mean, we've been all over the world, really. And, you know, this stuff has got to be talked about. We got to wake up our people. So my question to you is, when you were in some of them other countries, were you dealing with any kind of, well, first off, how were they responding to what's going on in America? Because I know we're public enemy number one, the black people, and America's public enemy number two. So when you were at some of them other countries, did you have to deal with any racial tension, seeing that people looking at you probably thinking, you know, you're not from here because you probably look different than some of them? Were you dealing with any racial tension in some of them other countries?
So I'll stick with like Vietnam, France, and Senegal. Vietnam, yes, in a sense, but so much of it really was curiosity. That country was closed off from the world for so long. They knew Black people existed. I was not in a major city. I was in an up-and-coming tourist city that had a lot of Russian people there, like Russians who were investing. They were opening businesses. They had their kids in school there 6 months out of the year. They were living in Vietnam. And so, yeah, there were moments where, I mean, I got stares. People took pictures without my permission. People touched my hair a couple of times. But most of the time, the overwhelming majority, it really was just curiosity. I could tell. It's like they could not believe their eyes. I am a fat Black woman, so they're like my body they probably hadn't seen before. My skin, I have natural hair. Sure, that was new to them as well. And then when there were moments where people were not so nice, at the time, my Vietnamese was enough to give them a little piece of my mind, for them to know at least I feel I had enough Vietnamese for them to know I wasn't just a backpacker passing through. So they knew, you know, like, I know what's going on here. I know, you know, how things work here. And it was enough to shut them up. It wasn't just, you know, I came for a weekend for, you know, the beaches type thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
In France, I will say, again, I was not in a major city, but I wasn't in Paris. I was in Western France, which is known for racism, apparently. I experienced more, I think, my second time when I was not a student, because of the students just mingle with each other. There are a lot of, you know, people from all over who come together. I think, honestly, as a Black woman, I experienced less than, like, my Black male friends that I met who live there. And again, France was just really, really in denial about being racist. Everything was, oh, everyone's French. We don't want to talk about it. We're not like the States. I will also add that of the time when I was in those countries, excuse me, I need to grab water real quick. Excuse me. I was in those countries under the Obama administration, which I know overwhelmingly made my experience more positive. France's approval rating for Obama, both terms, was way above even what the U.S. was. So that certainly helped. But I saw instances, you know, I'd be walking with friends and French police would stop all the guys in our group for no reason, go through their bags. They weren't violent toward them. Excuse me again, violent as in like harming their bodies, but I mean, we know there's emotional violence, so I'm sure that had some effect on them. I also know this was not the first time that they had encounters like that. It was a bit shocking for me because while I knew things like that happened, I really, you know, I was like, this happens in France. Like, I imagine this happening in America, but not necessarily outside of it. Senegal was different. Senegal was really uplifting, I think, even from the moment I stepped off the plane and we were driving, just to see billboards that were like all Black people was like mind changing. I mean, I'm coming from Spelman, coming from Atlanta, where there's a large Black population, but to really be surrounded by like every single ad, to see people who looked like me, varying shades, was very uplifting. Now, in that sense, there were times where, depending on what I wore, so if I wore something more traditional or just in general, I felt like I could pass a little bit. When I got my hair braided, I felt like I could pass a little bit in the sense where they thought that I was Senegalese or from an African country, like I should say, where they thought I knew my origins outside of the U.S. I did have friends who said that they knew I was American by the way that I walked, which I've heard from different things. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. Though as soon as I opened my mouth, I did learn a little bit of the local language, but still, people knew. And there's a word they use in Senegal for foreigner. For people who've read Roots, you hear Tubab. That is from the Wolof language that's widely spoken in Senegal. And it really means foreigner. It was really, yes, probably created for white people. And at first I took offense to it, but the more I think about it, like I am a foreigner. I was not from there. So I don't think I didn't face any like discrimination. Senegal honestly is a very welcoming country. They have a word called Teranga in their country that talks about hospitality, and they, like that as a people, they strive to be hospitable. So those were my experiences.
Okay. And you persevered through all that. Good for you.
Who knew? I mean, like, who knew? I love it. I love it. And hungry too. I was only there for a short time, and I knew this because we had Hungarian students who came to our school. Hungary's Easternish Europe, so sometimes they may have not treated blacks so well, but honestly, they had like an obsession with black people, particularly black men. Hungary's a very white country, so I mean that's nothing new to see an obsession with black men, but that was interesting to experience firsthand. Why just the men? Can we clarify that a little bit?
I honestly don't know. I mean, we might have to ask the Hungarian women. I'm not sure, but I mean, I traveled. There was a kid from my school who's black, Cameroonian, who grew up in Nigeria, so international student at this school, went to Hungary, had started dating a girl who was an exchange student, and they went over anyway. All that to say, when we went places, it's just, I don't think they just like gravitated toward him. And there were a handful of mixed kids, all of whom had a white mother and a black father. So I'm not totally sure. I do know Vietnam as well. These are places where they do recruit for athletics. So in soccer, like I met Nigerians in Vietnam, some of whom were studying because there was they had a new kind of partnership with the school. It was a London-based school that had campuses in Nigeria and also Vietnam. So there were some Nigerians there for that, but there were also professional soccer players who were given Vietnamese citizenship to play for the Vietnam team.
Wow.
So.
Well, people, it's 11 o'clock. We have really, really, really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure we can just go on forever because I'm still in awe. I really am. I think you are awesome in so many different ways that, I can't articulate them all. But I'm glad that you were able to share your personal and professional experience with us, and I hope you run for president one day.
Absolutely.
I'll be happy to work behind the
scenes. I'm not laughing. I'm serious. I didn't think about it, but now I am. I didn't come up with it. It was Mr. White that came up with that. But I'm in agreement. Like, I don't like these politics. These politics get on my nerves. But if you were to go run, I'd jump on the bandwagon, and I would be screaming loud and sparing not. I sure would.
I see myself behind the scenes, so maybe maybe in support of somebody running for president. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, first of all, one of the things we need to know about the presidential position is that it is an international one. We think it is a domestic one. It's not. So you can't be a president or hang out with them without the experience that you have. Now, the research that I did for the program that you went in with Harvard, the first question I asked you was, are you a diplomat? You know what I mean? Because that's what it looked like when I looked it up. Because I'm a researcher. I'm one of those, too. I mean, I study. So when I see something I'm not familiar with, I want to be familiar with it. And so I looked all that up, all of it. And what I found was, oh, my God, Brittany Mackey is a diplomat. And you never know who's a diplomat, really, because we know over 50% of the population is a diplomat, something like that. The number is outrageous. So, and diplomats are not necessarily supposed to tell you who they are.
Right.
So we'll leave that right where it's at. But, lots of people are diplomats that we wouldn't think were. So, and that's because the government needs spies here and international. So they spy is a bad word. But, they need people.
We always want to out people who are spying here. We do the same thing.
Right. So I just think it's so exciting. And I think if we can get young people involved earlier and thinking outside of their neighborhood, we'll be on the right track. Mm-hmm. We have a long way to go, clearly. Yeah. We have a long way to go. But I know it's possible. If you can do it, then I can't see anyone shying away from it. I believe every child can learn. I believe every child can achieve whatever it is they want. You have to first want it, though. You have to make the decision, what is it that you want? And then do you really want it? And if you do, then why not put 1, 2, and 3 together? What direction should you be going in to get it? I think you've done that, and I'm really glad that you did. I'm going to give this microphone to Kay so she can close us out and bid you farewell. But I just want to say thank you again for everyone who's joined us on the call tonight. Hopefully, Brittany Mackey has taken us out of the country to a few different destinations that we've never been to. This information, clearly we use these calls. These are raw calls, so anyone on this call will get the raw call. You can listen to it again. We will edit and repurpose the content in several different ways. You'll all be a part of that as well. But anyone live tonight will get the raw call, so you'll be able to listen to, us chat in the middle and all of that before edit. So thank you again. There's no way in the world you would be on this call right now if it were not a pure sacrifice. So I have to say thank you again. Lady K, take us away.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you. We are just so grateful again for you being here and sharing with us. And as we take away, one of the things that struck me is your focus. And so as we leave tonight, I hope that we can focus on what is needed for our community, for our children, for our families, because there are so many distractions right now going on. And one of the things that you were talking about was the fact that you didn't have as many distractions because you were focused. And so we thank you for that. I think that is something that we can use as we talk to our parents, as we talk to the young people in our communities that are dealing with so many distractions right now, even though they are, quarantined at home and having less access to some of the resources, but there are still the distractions. And so we thank you for sharing your experiences. I did have the privilege of being able to read your bio, and it's just astounding what like you said, your parents and the sacrifice that they made, the sacrifice that you made to be able to accomplish all that you have done in the 31 years that you've been on this earth. God bless you. God bless everyone that is on this call that has a mission that has brought you to this call. Again, we sit at this round table to be fed. We were nourished this evening, and we thank you, Brittany, for serving us, for serving the young people that you serve in your advisory position at Bentley. We thank you for the sacrifice that you made with the time that you've given to be here tonight. Again, each and every one of us on this line tonight, I bid you the best with everything that you do from this day forward, because you have something else to put into your pocket, your plate, and as a gift that was given to us this evening from Miss Brittany J. Mackey. And we thank you again as you continue your work at Bentley. Everyone, have a blessed evening, and we are so honored to be able to honor you and everything that you do going forward. Blessings to each and every one of us. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.